So this one here is going to be focusing on some South African history, specifically regarding Jan Van Riebeeck. I do know that there's been a few online discussions and issues of late regarding the typical tropes from the communist dictators that we have in the country and all their lickspits regarding Jan Van Riebeeck. And this is a video by Renaldo Gouws. I've been watching him for quite a long time. He's a pretty based guy. Yeah, let's get into it.
Hey, what's up guys, it's Renaldo here. So this video is going to focus on an inconvenient truth that the ANC-led government refuses to acknowledge or even talk about. Now, remember last week when I made a video about Cyril Ramaphosa blaming Jan Van Riebeeck for something that happened almost 400 years ago, and how it's just the evergreen excuse for the ANC. Whenever the ANC does something wrong, they don't...
And it always is. I do know South Africa's sort of only been on the, let's say, the geopolitical map recently, thanks to President Donald Trump. But they've been using this apartheid thing on us, specifically white people, since pretty much they came into power, the ANC. They've been using it pretty much since 1994 as a continual guilt-tripping tactic to obfuscate all the stuff that they do, to sort of brush it under the proverbial carpet, because everything that they do, it's because of white people, and it's because of it's classified as redress. So we have no right to complain, because of course it's all about redress. So if we're oppressing you, it's because you oppressed us first, and we'll find out later. Let's just find out how bad the oppression actually was.
blame themselves. They've never blamed themselves. They either blame apartheid, colonialism, or Jan Van Riebeeck. Now that sent me down this rabbit hole to actually ask a very important question. Who has caused the most pain and suffering in South Africa's history?
Yeah.
And the answer is not apartheid, not colonialism, and definitely not Jan Van Riebeeck. Now, it's important to note that the amount of deaths that took place under apartheid was 21,000, and that was also black on black violence, white on black violence, black on white violence, and of course, you know, the...
So just on that, I did my own bit of research, as well as I asked Grok about it as well, you know, because everybody uses AI, so I thought, you know, let me just find out what Grok has to say about it. So according to Grok, the amount of deaths that white people caused under apartheid, and this is white deaths specifically against black people, it was 2,700, right? The number that he uses, according to Grok, when it came to black on black violence under apartheid, and both metrics were the same. The timeline was between 1960 and 1994, which was the end of apartheid. So 2,700, specifically white on black violence. Same period, 1960 to 1994, black on black violence, 2,100. Sorry, 21,000 deaths. So 2,700 versus 21,000 deaths from black on black violence. That is quite a big difference. And yet they'll continually gaslight us as we're the ones that do more violence, we're more racist. And we've been having this for, again, 32 years. So final figures again, white on black violence under the apartheid regime, 2,700, black on black violence, which was perpetrated mainly by the IFP and the ANC on their own people. And they did that because the other people, the other black people, didn't necessarily want to support them, so they just killed them. And that was where you got all the necklace murders and all the riots and all the mass killings, black on black.
The apartheid issue is not merely just the amount of people that died, but also displacement and generational effects on wealth. You know, people didn't have the opportunities that other people had, and therefore the next generation suffered because of it. So I completely understand that concept, but even apartheid is not going to get close to what I'm going to mention as the number one cause of pain and suffering in South Africa. Now, like I said, the ANC government, specifically Cyril Ramaphosa and the previous presidents, will always refer to apartheid, Jan Van Riebeeck, or colonialism. But there is someone that stands head and shoulders above any other atrocity that has taken place in South Africa. And I'll give you a tip. They even named an airport in South Africa after him. Now, that's right, Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu, single-handedly, is the person that has caused more deaths than any other person in South Africa. Shaka Zulu killed more people than apartheid, colonialism, Jan Van Riebeeck, and all the atrocities, you know, that you want to put together. And yet we don't hear the ANC condemn Shaka Zulu. I mean, he killed more black people than anybody else in the history of South Africa.
In fact, and it's true, you know, it's not only do they not condemn him, not only do they, you know, they don't even bring it up, but it's not only do they not condemn, they in fact think he was such a great guy. In fact, the majority of South Africa, you know, when I was growing up and stuff, you know, everybody had this impression that Shaka Zulu was such a great guy. He, you know, he liberated his people. He was such a fantastic guy. No, he was absolute rubbish. And this is a thing that people tend to forget. Black people are generally, and still, even in this modern day, they're very tribalistic. They do, unfortunately, because of the culture, but it's really because of the ideology. They do have a tendency to just be more violent because of the ideology. And where the ideology, the black ideology, fits in very well with communist, socialist, Marxist ideologies. And the communist, Marxist, socialist ideology piggybacks off the black mentality. And it ends up doing a great disservice to majority black people who, based on stats, just seem to enjoy killing. You can tell this in the metrics. I know in the USA, there's also a disproportional amount of crime that is attributed to black people. And again, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have anything to do with skin color. The thing is, it's the ideology behind it. Because I know a few black people, and I know quite a few black people online, their ideology is completely different. So that's why it's got nothing to do with race. They're the ones that continually want to make it about race so that they can somehow point it back to, we're making it about race, the white people. No, it's them. The thing is, we're talking about the ideology behind the race that is the problem. Because you see this in America with the crazy liberals, these white Karens, all of these kind of people that are so against Trump with the Trump derangement syndrome. It's that ideology that is insane.
The estimate is between 1 to 2 million people, and this was mostly due to the Mfecane. And we don't hear about that. every single time there's an atrocity that takes place, or the ANC government wants to get some brownie points and want to appeal to more voters, then they bring in apartheid, colonialism, and blame Jan Van Riebeeck. But they never ever talk about what happened under Shaka Zulu's watch, when he killed his own people and many other tribes that either don't exist anymore today or have severely been compromised because of what happened in the 1800s. And that's also important to note. They will very quickly go to the 1600s, but then they will ignore what happened in the early 18th century, and they don't want to talk about it. How is it possible that somebody that killed between 1 and 2 million people aren't spoken of in South Africa, but they will fall back to apartheid, or they will talk about the Sharpeville massacre, but nobody talks about the Mfecane? Why is that? Why is it that the ANC will blame everything and everybody except Shaka Zulu?
And I think with the Sharpeville massacre, I might be wrong, but I think there was like 60 something people that got killed. And again, I'm not advocating for, I'm not excusing any kind of, killing. But the thing is, I do know, once again, it is the liberal, socialist, communist, Marxist mindset that excuses the greater atrocity, because it's the idea of, but you also did a thing. So it's like, in their understanding, it's a 1-for-1. It's irrespective of which one's greater. Even if the one was far less significant, again, not saying that any death is good or any killing is good, but the point is, with the liberal socialist Marxist mindset, it's always, but you've done it too. So therefore, because you've done it too, that excuses the far greater one. It excuses the people that are far more likely to do it in the future, because you also did it. Again, it's the mentality of 2,700 versus 21,000. But the 2,700 figure, that's the one that gets criticized because it was done by white people. Again, they're the ones that continually bring up race.
And also the irony here, this is the double standard in this country, where if you're black, you could kill 1 million people plus, we'll still name an airport after you.
That's right.
But hey, you created a Snoopy here in 1652. How dare you? You are evil. You are a vile human being, and what you brought to this country is terrible. Ignoring the fact that that little route that Bartolomeus Diaz and Vasco da Gama and eventually Jan Van Riebeeck perfected has brought in trillions of rands to the South African economy.
Yeah, and that's once again the insane double standard, where it is the continual gaslighting and guilt tripping that has happened to white South Africans. And again, the UK, you guys are experiencing it now. America, you guys are experiencing it now. It's this continual guilt trip of, but you guys once upon a time did a terrible thing. We're going to completely ignore and overlook all the fantastic world-changing things that you did do, because you did that one bad thing or those few bad things. And once again, even if it is disproportionate to what other people have done, which is far worse, the other people, what they've done, the thing is, you've done it, even if it's on a lesser scale. The problem is, you're white, you're part of the patriarchy, you're part of the problem, you are the existential crisis on humankind, because you've got this innate colonizing spirit that you want to enforce your white dominance on everybody, and you need to redress and you need to suffer for it. And you can ask them how long, and they're like, it doesn't matter how long, because it was all about basically extinction, really. And even then, they probably won't be satisfied. And once again, it's not a race thing. How I know it's not a race thing is because you got white people who want it as well for other white people. Other white people, we've got them in South Africa. Hell, you've got them in the UK. You've got them in the US. That's why it's not a race thing. It's an ideology thing. It's the woke, the leftists, the progressives, the Marxists, the socialists, whatever you want to call them.
Even to this day. But yet Jan Van Riebeeck is a villain, and Shaka Zulu, that arguably really didn't contribute anything to that magnitude to South Africa, is glorified. Can you explain that to me? Remember when every airport had its own name, like a person's name, and then they said, no, we need to be more neutral, and we are going to change all the airport names to neutral, like location names, like Cape Town International, and Port Elizabeth Airport, etc.
And you guys are seeing it now as well in the UK and the US, Well, you guys have seen it, I suppose, you guys have also seen it. It's the rewriting of your history. They tear down the statues. They destroy art. They destroy anything to do with the idea that white people are actually good for something, and white people have actually done some pretty fantastic, pretty noble things for the betterment of, yes, humanity. They continually want to rewrite history to fit what they see in the future, and they'll justify how they get there and all the crazy stuff that they have to do, because we have to destroy the patriarchy. The only way we can do that is to slander them, rewrite history, so that people can forget about the great things that white people have done. And again, it's more the ingenuity, it's the ideology behind white people, because there's black people that have got the same mentality. And so it's this rewriting of history so that they can, I don't know, have their strange dystopian utopia that they want.
And then they decided in KZN, instead of calling it KwaZulu-Natal International Airport, they called it after South Africa's Hitler, Shaka Zulu. They called it King Shaka International Airport. It's a bit weird, don't you think? I mean, that's like going to Germany.
Just a bit.
And then you land at Adolf Hitler International Airport.
Yeah, imagine, right?
How does that make sense? Well, it does make sense if you think about it in an ANC type of way, where they can talk about the heroics of Shaka Zulu.
And also, just once again, you can liken the ANC pretty much to the progressives. You can liken them to the Keir Starmers. You can liken them to the same ideology of your Kamala Harris kind of thing. They've got this delusional bend towards just destruction, but they'll hide it under a guise of multiculturalism, of trying to do right by the oppressed. That's how they sell the idea.
Zulu, and how he led the Zulu nation into a specific way of fighting, but they will leave out the fact that nearly 2 million people, and some speculate that it's 2.5 million people, that was killed during his watch. Now, it's also important to note that the people that suffered the most was the Nguni tribes and also the Xhosas. But yet, today, it's almost as if the Xhosas don't remember that Shaka Zulu nearly wiped them off the face of the earth. And then, of course, the Nguni tribes that are left. It's very weird, and I think very disrespectful for a government to name an airport after somebody that killed hundreds of thousands of the people that live in the surrounding areas, don't you?
Yeah, And it's once again, it's the same as the fact that they killed 21,000 of their own. And it's somehow the white man's to blame. Somehow the white man is far worse. Like, and this is why the whole idea of separate nation states would be pretty decent in South Africa, not just for the sake of for white people, but also for the sake of the Xhosas, the Zulus being separate, because once again it is very tribalistic. So it would be safer for them to be separate. And somehow it's inconceivable to even talk like this, because it's because it's said by white people, it's automatically deemed racist. But it's also the idea of, no, it's going to be safer for everybody if nation states were a thing. And it's just considered blasphemy when a white person says it, even though it makes more sense for everybody and it would be far safer for everybody. I don't know.
What do you think? I mean, that is literally like calling one of South Africa's airports HR verwoerd once again. Yeah, no, but once again, just to illustrate the point very clearly, the ANC government will gladly talk about apartheid and all the atrocities and talk about colonialism and all the atrocities. Every now and then bring up Jan Van Riebeeck as if it all started when Jan Van Riebeeck arrived. But not Jan Van Riebeeck or any single person in apartheid or any single person in colonialism, even Cecil John Rhodes, came close to killing as many people as Shaka Zulu.
Yeah.
And yet today, you will not hear a single person in the ANC, EFF or MK condemn what Shaka Zulu did during the Mfukane.
No, they'll never.
How does that work? That's just the double standards in this country, where if you are a white individual, then hey, we can come after you for anything that you've done in your past, but we're going to ignore.
Because even if they did have to bring it up, by them bringing it up, it automatically means that, wait, are you telling me that black people aren't the best people in the world? Are you telling me that black people have also done terrible things? That's why they won't even bring it up. They won't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. Because they've attempted to sell this narrative to the world, even though, hell, the world does have eyes, they can see. But they've attempted to sell this narrative that they are the transcendent ones. They are human beings 2.0. So they won't even bring it up, because it's going to hurt their cause. Because then basically what they're saying is, oh wait, they're just like the rest of human beings. They're just like us. And, sorry about it, but according to stats, it looks like, they're a little bit worse in terms of, they're a little bit more killy than other people are. And again, the ideology, not the race.
This one individual that has actually got the #1 position for killing people in this country. And in actual fact, we're going to name an airport after that individual. And all of this just boils down to the fact that the ANC hates to discuss things that make them and their history look terrible. Because they will gladly point at white people and say, look at all these terrible things that you have done.
Yep.
Noting though that even, during this period, the Afrikaners also suffered. I mean, the British came and they put our women and children into concentration camps, and they nearly wiped the Afrikaner off the face of the earth.
Yep.
And nobody really talks about that. But yet apartheid and colonialism is mentioned all the time, and nothing is said about the Mfukane and about the biggest killer of black people in this country, which is Shaka Zulu. Why not? Why doesn't the media talk about that? Why doesn't the ANC government talk about that? Why is this not taught in our history books in South Africa in 2026?
Because it's going to hurt the agenda.
Because it's an inconvenient truth. And they don't want to showcase that it's not only white people that did terrible things in South Africa, but also black people. Because that destroys the narrative. That doesn't assist the narrative that the ANC wants to drive around the world by talking about how they overcame this terrible system. Ironically though, the Mfecane happened almost 200 years after Jan Van Riebeeck settled here. And that's never spoken about. So just to conclude this video, whenever you hear Cyril Ramaphosa or the ANC open their mouths and want to talk cock about the history of this country, just remind them and ask them, but what about Shaka Zulu and what about the Mfecane? And why, if you are so against killings and terrible atrocities in this country, are you celebrating this individual that is comparatively the South African version of Hitler? Why are you so proud of this individual that you named an airport after him? I think these are the type of discussions that we should be having in 2026 if the ANC wants to continue down this path of colonialism, apartheid, and blaming Jan Van Riebeeck. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash that like button. Share this video far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe. It's absolutely free. It won't cost you anything. And the overwhelming majority of you that watch my content aren't subscribed. But you can fix that by clicking the subscribe button below. And then if you'd like to financially support me or this channel, you can do so by giving a super thanks. It's a $sign below and you can click it and choose an amount and donate. Or you can become a member to this channel by clicking the join button below, and that'll cost you R39.99 a month. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till later. Cheers and peace out.
Cheers. Yeah, so I think it is just incredibly important, like Renaldo said as well, just in 2026. Like, we have too much of history has been rewritten, too much of history has been overlooked for political agendas. We can just go to X quickly. And it's, once again, it's not just limited to, South Africa. It's not just limited to Africa as a whole. It's starting to, and it has been like this for some time now in the US and in the UK and Europe. And this clash of ideologies, this critical race theory, this obsession with white guilt and white hatred it has to be dealt with, and there has to be a better way, because these are kind of like the repercussions that happen because of it. Namibia rejects Starlink license over local ownership rules. So this is basically just Namibia decided to do pretty much the same thing as the ANC did when Trump wanted to bring Starlink to South Africa. It's once again, it's the rejection of business, of growth, of giving economies a boost by encouraging businesses to come, because it doesn't fit the agenda. Because in this case, Namibia's something about because the local subsidiary had zero Namibian ownership. So because they don't get ownership, the government in Starlink, they're not interested. In South Africa, when they got approached about getting Starlink, they were uninterested because Elon wouldn't give them, it was like a third of the company. He was unwilling to give a third of his company to the government, to the South African government. I mean, the very fact that you would have the audacity to demand from a business owner that they must just straight up give you 1/3 of the business in order for the business to operate? No. But that's the thing. It's the ideology that's the problem. That's why communist Russia, I mean, look at Lenin and Stalin. How many people did they kill? Of their own people? Again, millions. That's why it's not a race thing, it's an ideology thing. But with that is pretty much all I have to say. And I will see you guys on the next one. Cheers.